It's not purposeful. It's not that people see it but decide not to see it. Our minds prevent us from seeing it. The strength of the cognitive building blocks that determine our Jewish identity are so powerful, we just don't see the Palestinians. I'll tell you a story about that. This is about 1.5 years ago, before I had my awakening, my seeing of reality. So I was driving in my car with 2 Protestant pastors from Texas who wanted me to show them the area. So my car has, of course, 3 seats in the back, 2 in front. I was sitting in one of the driver's seat, another pastor next to me, and pastor behind. There's 2 empty seats in the car. So I pick up a hitchhiker, and then I let him off. And I pick up another hitchhiker and let him off. Picked up the 3rd hitchhiker and let him off as we're driving. And when I let the 3rd guy off, one of the pastors said to me, "Hanan, you're such a nice guy. You pick up hitchhikers. We don't do that in Texas." And I said, "Yeah. Around here, we all feel a certain sense of brotherhood. We all feel a common mission. We trust everyone. We pick up anyone who puts out their finger." And then when I said that, I realized I was lying. I said it, and then I realized I was lying. Because I don't pick up everyone who puts out their finger, only if they're Jewish. But how can I say to myself and to these pastors, I pick up everyone who puts out his finger? 95% of the people I don't pick up. In other words, in my mind, I didn't realize they were there. They weren't part of the human picture. They were part of the scenery that just goes right by you. And I startled myself when I realized what I had done, what I had said, how I was thinking. And that's terrible. We just don't see the Palestinians. Now, why don't we see them? Our lives are so intertwined. We live so close to each other, but we're so far away. We're so far away. We live in separate settlements. They live in their towns, we live in our towns. We have separate school systems, separate languages, of course, separate media, television, newspaper, radio. What they read, I don't read. What I hear, they don't hear. We live in 2 different worlds in that sense. Different economic systems, where I shop, they don't shop. Different after-school activities. Different cultural frameworks. Everything is separate. There's no connection. The people who pick up my garbage don't pick up their garbage. It's different municipalities. And it's even different legal systems. I live under Israeli law. They live under military occupation. I have no idea how they live, and they have no idea how I live. When you're so close together, but so far away, of course, at the minimum, there's ignorance. Complete ignorance. You have no idea of the story, of the narrative, of the life, of the conception, of the identity of the other. No idea. And if there's ignorance, of course, there's going to be stereotypes, and there's going to be misunderstanding, and there's going to be prejudice, of course. That's clear that it's going to be. And then, given that we're in a war zone here, and there's violence on both sides, the ignorance and the misunderstanding, the prejudice, is going to give way to racism, is going to give way to hate, is going to give way to lots and lots of fear. And I'm speaking from my side that it's true on both sides. No knowledge of the other, fear, loathing, racism, misunderstanding of the most basic motivations. So everything the other side does is misinterpreted. Everything is misunderstood. And if I mention the fear that we Jews live in of the Palestinians, I'll just tell you one story about that. This is about 1 year ago, here in Alon Shvut, where we live. It's a settlement of about 600, 700 families, right outside the gate. On the other side of the road, there's a Palestinian clan that lives. It's not even a village. There's 4, 5, 6 houses. And they put up a sign on the road in Hebrew that said, Mishtelet HaShalom, the peace nursery. Nursery in the sense of selling potted plants and gardening implements. And my wife and I needed a potted plant in the house. And I said to my wife, why don't you go there and get it? And she went, she got in the car, and she went to this new nursery, came back half an hour later with the plant, and she told me the following unbelievable story. She told me the following. She said, I got in the car, coming out of our house, drove 2 minutes to the gate of Alon Shvut, parked the car, walked across the street to the entrance of the nursery. A young Palestinian kid met me there, and he couldn't speak Hebrew so well. So it was flustering, but then the owner came over. He knew Hebrew better. I told him what I wanted. And then my wife said, he took me, just he and I, into the nursery. And then together we opened the door of the hot house and went in alone, the 2 of us, to its depths. And there he showed me some plants. I found the one I wanted. I walked out with it. We were walking out together. He closed the door of the nursery of the hothouse behind him, and we walked to the cash register, and when we saw 3 or 4 Palestinians sitting on the side and smoking and eating and speaking Arabic, and then we went to the cash register together. I paid for the plant, took it in my hands, got in the car, drove home. Here it is, my wife said, and then she said, that was one of the most frightening experiences of my whole life. I'll never go back again. I barely got out of there by the skin of my teeth. And this happened at a time when I already had begun undergoing the transformation I'm about to tell you about. When I already knew that there's such a thing as Palestinians were human beings. And I looked at her and I had no idea what to say. Because I knew that fear is irrational. And I could say, Allah, it was convenient. You got what you wanted. It was inexpensive. Nothing happened. But to her, something terrible happened. And then she said, concerning herself, she said, I did a stupid thing. I risked my life. How did I do that? That's the fear we live in. And that fear is within our consciousness every minute. And since there are terrorist attacks, and since there's violence, and since there's fear and ignorance and misunderstanding and prejudice, which becomes racism, everything the other side does is interpreted as violent, and as primitive, and as dangerous. And they're all painted with the broad brush, they're all terrorists. And we have to be afraid of all of them. We have to be afraid of all of them. After I got involved in this place, I still haven't told you how I got involved. A few months after I got involved in this place, I got a phone call on a Friday afternoon from Ali, who's the leader of this movement. And Ali said to me, Hanan, how are you? I said, okay. He said, Hanan, I have to borrow some money. Is that okay? He was really embarrassed about it. He said, okay, how much do you need? He said, 200 shekels. I said, fine. He said, Hanan, could you come right over and bring it? I said, fine. I want to do a favor for my friend. So I looked at my wallet, there was no money. I went to my daughter, and I said, can I borrow some money? She said, what do you need it for? I said, my new friend Ali just called me and said he has to borrow money. And she said, don't go, it's a trap. Of course, that's what she should think. That's what we all think. It's all a trap. They only want to kill us. So that's the situation we live in. And then 1.5 years ago, my eyes were opened. It's a long story. I won't tell you the whole story, but I was invited to a kumsitz, to a get-together, a party of 20 Palestinians and 20 Israelis, local Israelis. And that party was right here. These tarps weren't there. There was nothing here. Then just open land, no buildings, nothing. And it was a Thursday afternoon, and I went to the front door of my house and I told my wife that I was going to meet some Palestinians. And she said, don't go, it's dangerous. And I went anyway. But as I walked through the fields, I didn't have to take the car. I walked through the fields 20 minutes from my house. Came right around that wall over there, and I came right in here, and I got right there, and I saw these people, Palestinian Israelis, talking to each other, and that doesn't happen around here. It can't happen. It's like a miracle. And my life began to change that very afternoon. I see this woman who was standing by this fig tree, which was much younger, that fig tree, and she's in brown from head to toe. She's a Palestinian, it turns out, from Beit Umar, and I can only see her face. And somehow I got the courage to walk up to her. I've never talked to Palestinian in my life, except as a soldier, or as a homeowner, accepting menial workers into my house. And suddenly I see these Palestinians. I walk up to this woman, I say, how are you? I talked in English, and she spoke English, and we exchanged a few niceties. And then I said to her, I can't believe I'm talking to you. You know what she said to me? She said, I can't believe I'm talking to you. We don't talk to settlers. I said, we don't talk to Palestinians. And then we kept talking. And she introduced me to her husband. And her husband's name is Jamal, who's become a close friend of mine. And Jamal tells me they live in Beit Umar, which I mentioned already. And Jamal takes out his smartphone to show me on Google Maps where they live exactly in Beit Umar. And for like 5 seconds, I couldn't believe that a Palestinian has a smartphone. It just didn't register. And he takes out his phone. And by the way, I didn't know what Google Maps were then, and he taught me what Google Maps are. So he shows me where he lives, and he lives right on the border of Beit Umar, where it abuts a Israeli settlement, a small Israeli settlement called Karmei Tzur. This is about 10 minutes driving south of here. I said to Jamal, I used to live in Karmei Tzur 30 years ago. And I remembered at that moment something that happened a number of times 30 years ago, which is the following. We had small kids in the house, infants, and infants sometimes cry and scream and do naughty things. Their parents get angry. Perhaps in your house it doesn't happen, but in our house it happens. And I remember my wife, when she got really, really angry at the kids, she would curse and she would say, "Go to Beit Umar." Do I need to translate that to any language for you? Mm-hmm. Like, go to hell. Mm-hmm. And now I'm meeting someone from hell, someone and his wife. And they're both human beings, and they speak English, and they have smartphones. You can't imagine, you're probably laughing at me, I'm laughing at myself also. You can't imagine how confused I was, how the inner dissonance was so strong. Now, we used to live, myself, my wife, and our kids, on the border, on the fence of Karmei Tzur. Looking at Google Maps, we saw that myself and Jamal were neighbors. But what did I know from him 30 years ago? I knew that the people in Beit Umar, they throw rocks at our kids, and that sometimes they put big boulders on the access road to Karmei Tzur, preventing us in the middle of the night from driving our cars. You have to get out of the car and move the boulders. And I knew that rocks were always thrown at our cars. I myself have been attacked a number of times. And suddenly I'm talking to someone from hell. And he's telling me the story, the first time he met an Israeli, how hard it was for him to shake an Israeli's hand for the first time, and how he began to open his mind to the existence and the truth and humanity of the other. And what he had gone through, told me in the stories, what I went through as he began to talk to me. And then Jamal said to me, I don't know, he just, out of the blue, he said, Hanan, people who have big kippot like yours, when our kids see people who dress like that, they start to cry. I said, Jamal, why do they start to cry? And he said, because of your beard. I said, what do you mean because of my beard? He said, don't you understand? All the people with big kippot and long beards, they carry submachine guns and they kill our kids. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And then suddenly a light bulb went off in my mind. And I understood how Jamal and his kids look at me. Because I remembered at the very moment that there's lots of times that we go on hikes in the fields to feel the land of Israel under our feet, to open up the pages of the Bible and see where things happened, to visit the ancient archaeological remnants of our existence here 2,000 years ago. And of course, when we walk through the fields, we wear guns because we're afraid of the terrorists. But then I suddenly said to myself, how does it look to Jamal's children that he sees these Jews who look so strange wearing guns and walking through their fields? And something began to change inside of me. And then we talked together, I talked to other people, and we ate together. The kitchen here, by the way, is kosher. And then we sat in a circle, about the 20 people left, and we just started to talk. And one of the Jewish organizers spoke, and then the Palestinian organizer, Ali Abu Wad, spoke. And Ali spoke for just 15 minutes, and he explained what it's like growing up in Beit Umar, where he comes from. And he said how hard it is to live under occupation. And my skin started to tingle when he said occupation. I had no idea what he was talking about. Or to say it differently, I had every idea what he was talking about, but I never in my life heard anyone face to face use that word. I've heard it on the news, and I've seen it in the newspaper, but I never heard someone tell me directly to my face about the occupation. And it was so hard to hear because I'm not an occupier. So I said to myself, I have come back after 2,000 years of dreaming and hoping to fulfill the vision of the prophets for the Jewish people in our ancient homeland. And I suddenly heard that while I was fulfilling God's dream and hope and plan for the Jewish people, that at that same time, I was an occupier to someone else. And that was really, really hard to hear and challenging. And then Ali tells the story of his childhood, and he talks about his past, and he talks about 1947 and being exiled from the town where his parents were born, which is now Kiryat Gat, near Ashdod, and of being a refugee and coming to Beit Umar, and occupation and suffering and checkpoints and midnight arrests. Ali said it so without rank, without hate, just telling the story of his life. But hearing the story of his life deeply, deeply, deeply offended me and deeply, deeply challenged me. And I walked out of that event, again, which was right here, and I didn't know what to do with myself. My heart was pounding, and I was confused, and I was upset. And I remember walking back and forth, pacing in my study for days and weeks, not knowing what to make of this. And like everyone in our generation, so I go to Google, and I find myself reading all these leftist websites that a good religious Orthodox rightist Jew like me should never be caught dead reading. Like, I don't know if you heard of them, but B'Tselem and Human Rights Watch and all these things. And a lot of what I read was much, much more offensive and aggressive than what Ali was saying. It was full of venom, directed against the settlers, that is to say, directed against me. And I saw a lot of hate there. And at the same time, I saw things that I suddenly realized were true. Things that I had seen for 34 years but not seen. Things that had just gone in one ear and out the other. Things that had been caught by my eyeballs but not absorbed by my brain because I didn't have the cognitive building blocks to understand anything but the Zionist Jewish settler narrative. But suddenly, after I'd met human beings, there was a crack opened in the window of my soul that I was able to see another truth. Another truth that was directly at odds with my truth. And as I read this stuff, and then I start reading books, and I start coming back to this place and talking to more Palestinians and talking to Israelis who have met Palestinians, I was undergoing a spiritual crisis. And I remember there were a number of times when I felt that I had to bend down and pick up my stomach and put it back inside because it was so painful, and it was such a rumbling going on. I was nauseous a lot of days. And I began to come to a place in which I make room in my soul and my mind for another truth. It's not that I learned a lot of new facts, just that something changed inside. There was a metamorphosis. Like, you know those pictures they show you, I forget what it's called. You see a picture that could be a woman and could be a vase. There's a name for that? And when you see one, you can't find the other. When you find the other, you can't find that. And you go back and forth until sometimes a moment comes you can see both at the same time. And it's almost hard. It's hard to hold them both at the same time. And I felt that I reached the point in my life, in the past year and a half, the things I've been going through, that I can see both the woman and the vase at the same time. I can see the truth and the beauty and the wonder and the justice and the power of the Jewish narrative. And I can see the beauty and the truth and the power and the historical connectivity of the Palestinian story, and I can also see and feel for the Palestinian suffering. And they're both there. And I've learned there are so few people who can hold both of those stories at the same time. But I think there's no way to go forward in this land unless you can hold both stories at the same time. And how do you do that? You do that by meeting the other, which is really hard. And the depth to which you are who you are, whether it's Jew, Israeli, or Palestinian, Muslim or Christian, the depth to which you are who you are, that depth makes it harder and more painful and more almost traitorous to reach out to meet the other and to bring the other's truth into who you are. It means an absolute development or metamorphosis, a transformation of identity. And this transformation of identity, which I've gone through and I'm still going through, I actually see that in Jewish philosophical terms. this is complicated, so I'll say it very, very quickly in just 2 minutes and try and make it clear. There's a Jewish mystical understanding that God is many-faceted. And because God is many-faceted, therefore truth on earth is many-faceted. There's lots of different truths. And the truth is, there's truth in everything. There's truth in every religion. There's truth in every political party. There's truth in the way every gender sees things. There's truth everywhere. We call them sparks of truth in the Jewish mystical tradition. Now, if there's sparks of truth everywhere, then is there such a thing as falsehood? The definition of falsehood is partial truth masquerading as full truth. Partial truth masquerading as full truth. We all have some truth, but in so many cases we mistake our partial truth for the only truth, for the full truth, for the complete truth. And I've realized that I have been living in falsehood all my life. I certainly still am, because I've been mistaking my truth, my Jewish truth, which is true, but I've been mistaking it for full truth when it's really only one of the truths. It's an important truth. For me, it's the most important truth, but 49% of truth is not my truth, it's another truth. So in making room for the Palestinian existence, narrative, humanity, truth, and making room for the Palestinian truth in my soul, from a religious point of view, I feel that I'm becoming fuller. I'm coming closer to truth. I'm expanding my soul to embrace more and more aspects of truth, more and more sparks of truth. And that makes life richer and harder, much harder. And I began to realize only in the past 6 months that it's not enough, perhaps the last 8 months, it's not enough to expand your soul and to know more truth and meet Palestinians and empathize and understand and include. You also have to do something about it. You also have to change your lifestyle in order to express the expanded truth. So whereas for my whole life I've been expressing the Jewish truth in the way that I live my life, I realize that I have to do things on the ground that are going to express not just the Jewish connection to this land, but also express the Palestinian connection to this land. And also I'm going to have to do something about the fact that in the vast majority of cases, the fulfillment of my truth has been coming at the expense of the other side. And I have to find a new way to live my life so that I can actualize and consummate my truth without it coming at the expense of the other side's truth. That's a little bit about me, and it's also the story of this place. For the past year and a half, I've found myself kind of against my will, or just not because I planned it. I found that as my life was changing, I've been at the ground level of building a center here for what we call Palestinian-Israeli grassroots understanding, nonviolence, and transformation. It's called Roots. This is Roots. I should be careful. This is not Roots. This is the place where Roots is centered. The place itself has a lot of other things going on as well. In this land belongs to the Abu Awad family from Beit Umar. And the family project on this land is led by Ali Abu Awad. And Ali, a year and a half ago, just a few weeks before that party that I described that began to change my life, Ali had moved here, and there was nothing here then. Everything you see here has been built since then. Ali moved here with the intention of building a Palestinian Center for Nonviolence. Palestinian, no connection to Israelis. Palestinian Center for Nonviolence. Because he believes that the only way for the Palestinians to achieve their rights is to show themselves, to show the Israelis, and show the world that they're not violent, that they don't attack. Because he understands that the biggest fear, let me say it differently, that the biggest obstacle to Palestinian rights is Jewish fear. It's the Jewish fear that's preventing the Jews from allowing the Palestinians to have what they deserve. That's what Ali believes. And the way for the Palestinians to circumvent the Jewish fear is to work for their rights completely and nonviolently. To show the Jews there's nothing to be afraid of. to show us there's nothing to be afraid of.